Many older adults begin waking around 3 a.m., not because something is suddenly wrong, but because sleep itself changes quietly with age. In earlier years, sleep tends to move in long, deep cycles. The body enters deep rest easily and stays there for extended periods, protected from small disturbances. Sounds fade, thoughts dissolve. The mind and body remain submerged in sleep until morning arrives. As the years pass, this structure gradually softens. Sleep becomes lighter, more layered, and more sensitive to subtle internal and external signals. Around the early morning hours, usually between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m., sleep naturally shifts toward lighter stages. This happens at every age, but in younger bodies, the transition often goes unnoticed because deep sleep returns quickly. In older adults, deep sleep is shorter and less dominant. The brain spends more time in light sleep, where awareness is closer to the surface. As a result, awakenings during this window become easier and more frequent. The person may open their eyes, notice the quiet, and feel suddenly awake even if they went to bed feeling tired. This change is not insomnia in the usual sense. There may be no racing thoughts, no anxiety, no discomfort. The body simply completes a sleep cycle and does not immediately return to the next one. The mind is calm but alert. The room feels still. Time feels suspended. Many people describe this moment as peaceful, even though it can become frustrating if they expect to sleep continuously until morning. What often adds confusion is that the body may feel rested enough at that moment. Sleep pressure, which builds during the day through activity and mental engagement, tends to be lower in older adults. With reduced physical exertion and slower rhythms, the need for long, uninterrupted sleep decreases. Waking at 3 a.m. may reflect that the body has already received much of the rest it needs, even if the clock suggests otherwise. There is also a biological sensitivity at play. As sleep becomes lighter, the brain responds more readily to signals such as changes in temperature, bladder fullness, minor aches, or subtle noise. These signals may not have been strong enough to wake the person years earlier, but now they gently rise to awareness. The awakening is not forced, it is invited. Importantly, this pattern often remains consistent. People wake around the same time night after night, which suggests rhythm rather than disorder. The body is following a new internal schedule, one that no longer matches younger expectations of sleep. Trouble arises when this natural shift is met with worry or resistance. Watching the clock trying to force sleep or interpreting the awakening as a problem can activate the nervous system and make returning to rest more difficult. Understanding that waking around 3 a.m. is a common part of how sleep evolves after 60 changes the experience. Instead of fearing the moment, it can be met with patience. Sometimes the body returns to sleep naturally, sometimes it does not. Either outcome is not a failure. It is simply the body expressing a lighter, more sensitive form of rest, one that reflects age adaptation and a different relationship with night and time. The aging brain spends less time in deep sleep, making nighttime awakenings more noticeable, and this shift happens gradually, often without being recognized as it unfolds. Deep sleep, also known as slow-wave sleep, is the stage where the brain disconnects most fully from the outside world. In younger years, the brain enters this stage easily and stays there for long periods, especially in the first half of the night. Sounds fade into the background. The body remains still. Time passes without awareness. As the brain ages, this deep stage becomes shorter and lighter, not because something is failing, but because the brain's priorities are changing. After 60, the brain spends more time in lighter stages of sleep, where awareness sits closer to the surface. In these stages, the brain is still resting, but it is more responsive to signals. A slight change in temperature, a shift in body position, or a quiet internal cue can bring the mind into wakefulness. These awakenings often feel sudden, even though they are part of a natural cycle. The brain is not being pulled out of deep rest. It is simply completing a lighter sleep phase and pausing before the next one begins. What makes these awakenings more noticeable is not their frequency alone, but the clarity with which they are experienced. In deep sleep, brief awakenings often pass unnoticed. The brain dips back into rest before awareness forms. When deep sleep is reduced, awakenings last just long enough to be remembered. The person may become aware of the room, the silence, or their own thoughts. This awareness can make it feel as though sleep is fragmented, even if the total amount of rest remains adequate. This change does not necessarily affect how rested a person feels during the day. Many older adults function well despite these awakenings. The brain compensates by distributing rest more evenly across the night. Shorter sleep segments are still restorative, especially when combined with calm, wakeful moments. The idea that sleep must be continuous to be healthy comes largely from younger patterns, not from how sleep naturally evolves over time. The brain's shift away from deep sleep also reflects increased sensitivity and awareness. The nervous system becomes more attuned to the body and environment. This can be protective. The brain remains more alert to discomfort, position, or need. While this alertness can interrupt sleep, it also supports safety and regulation. The trade-off is not loss but balance. Problems arise when awakenings are interpreted as threats. Checking the clock, worrying about not sleeping enough, or forcing the mind to shut down can activate stress responses that were not present before. The brain, already more sensitive, reacts quickly to this tension. The awakening then becomes longer and more frustrating, not because of the sleep change itself, but because of the meaning attached to it. Understanding that the aging brain naturally spends less time in deep sleep reframes these experiences. Nighttime awakenings become expected pauses rather than failures. The brain is not broken, it is adapting. When this adaptation is met with calm acceptance, the nervous system settles more easily, and sleep, whether in shorter stretches or longer ones, continues to support rest, clarity, and well-being in its own gentle way. Hormonal changes can affect how the body maintains sleep during the early morning hours, and this influence often works quietly in the background, unnoticed for years. Hormones act as messengers that help regulate sleep, wakefulness, temperature, and stress response. In younger bodies, these signals rise and fall in a strong, predictable rhythm. Sleep is protected by a balance of hormones that encourage rest through the night and gently prepare the body to wake closer to morning. As we age, this balance gradually shifts. One of the most important changes involves hormones that support deep, continuous sleep. Melatonin, often called the night signal, is released to help the body stay asleep in darkness. With age, melatonin production may decrease or begin earlier in the evening and fade sooner before dawn. This means the body may receive a weaker signal to remain asleep during the early morning hours. The result is not sudden waking, but a lighter hold on sleep. The body rests, then releases that rest more easily. At the same time, hormones related to alertness and stress, such as cortisol, may begin to rise earlier than they once did. Cortisol is not a harmful hormone. It helps the body prepare for the day. But when its rise shifts closer to early morning, it can gently lift the brain toward wakefulness around 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. The person may wake feeling calm rather than anxious, aware rather than disturbed. The body is simply responding to a hormonal signal that says rest has softened. Temperature regulation hormones also play a role. Body temperature naturally drops at night and rises toward morning. With age, this rhythm becomes less stable. Small changes in temperature can make sleep harder to maintain. Feeling slightly too cool or too warm may be enough to bring the brain into awareness when sleep is already light. These hormonal shifts do not mean something is wrong. They are part of the body's natural adjustment over time. The challenge comes when early waking is interpreted as a problem that must be solved. Worry activates additional stress hormones, which can reinforce wakefulness. What began as a gentle hormonal transition becomes a prolonged awakening because the body senses concern. Many older adults notice that their early morning awakenings feel different from insomnia. There may be no racing thoughts, no frustration at first, just quiet awareness. Understanding the hormonal role helps explain why falling back asleep may feel harder, not because the body is failing, but because the signals that once held sleep firmly are now softer. Responding with gentleness matters. Calm acceptance allows hormone levels to settle naturally. The body often finds its way back to rest, or at least remains relaxed rather than tense. Sleep may return in shorter segments, but these segments still carry value. If this explanation brought clarity or reminded you of your own experience, you may leave a quiet comment number 1 below. Only if it feels right. Increased nighttime awareness often reflects a calmer but more sensitive nervous system, not a restless or anxious one. As the body ages, the nervous system gradually shifts its mode of operation. In younger years, it prioritizes efficiency and endurance, filtering out small signals so that sleep remains deep and uninterrupted. Over time, that filtering softens. The nervous system becomes more receptive, more finely tuned to what is happening within the body and the surrounding environment. This sensitivity does not mean instability. In many ways, it reflects a nervous system that has slowed down and settled. At night, when external demands are minimal, this sensitivity becomes more noticeable. Sounds that once passed unnoticed may register gently. Internal sensations such as breathing temperature or muscle tension come into awareness more easily. The mind is not racing. It is observant. This awareness often feels calm rather than disturbing. The person may lie awake, quietly aware of the stillness of the room, the rhythm of breath, or the passage of time, without feeling distressed. This calmer state is different from hyperarousal. Hyperarousal is tense and urgent. Increased nighttime awareness is soft and neutral. The nervous system is not an alarm. It is simply no longer deeply shielded by heavy sleep. The boundary between sleep and wakefulness becomes thinner, allowing awareness to flow more freely between the two. The person may drift in and out of light sleep, resting even while partially awake. As sensitivity increases, the nervous system responds more quickly to small changes. A slight discomfort, a need to shift position, or a change in light can prompt awareness. These prompts are not disruptive by themselves. They become disruptive only when met with resistance or worry. When the person accepts the awareness without judgment, the nervous system remains calm. Tension does not build, and rest continues in a quieter form. This sensitivity also reflects a nervous system that has reduced its drive for stimulation. During the day, older adults often prefer calmer environments. At night, the same preference appears as alertness to subtle sensations. The body is no longer seeking deep disconnection. It is comfortable with light awareness. This can feel unfamiliar, especially when compared to earlier life, but it is not harmful. Many people interpret nighttime awareness as a sign of poor sleep. In reality, the body may still be resting. Muscles are relaxed. Breathing is steady. Heart rate remains low. The nervous system is not demanding action. It is simply present. Rest is happening even if sleep does not feel as complete or unconscious as before. Learning to recognize this state helps reduce unnecessary stress. Instead of trying to force sleep, allowing awareness to exist can be more effective. The nervous system often responds by settling further, and sleep may return naturally. Even when it does, not the calm awareness itself can be restorative. Understanding increased nighttime awareness as a reflection of a calmer, more sensitive nervous system reframes the experience. It is not a problem to be fixed. It is a different expression of rest, one that asks for acceptance rather than control. When met gently, it allows nights to unfold with less struggle and more ease, honoring the body's evolving relationship with sleep. Reduced daytime activity may lower sleep pressure, leading to earlier awakenings, and this pattern often develops gradually without being noticed. Sleep pressure is the body's natural drive to sleep, built through physical movement, mental engagement, and exposure to daily rhythms. In younger years, days are often filled with activity that gently exhausts the body. By night, sleep arrives with weight and stays firmly in place. As daily activity decreases with age, this pressure builds more slowly and releases sooner. Many older adults move less during the day, not because they are inactive by choice, but because life has become simpler. Responsibilities are fewer. Movement is more measured. Tasks are completed at a calmer pace. While this brings comfort and reduces strain, it also means the body may not accumulate enough sleep pressure to sustain long, uninterrupted rest through the night. The body rests, but it finishes resting earlier. This does not mean sleep quality is poor. It means the balance between activity and rest has shifted. When sleep pressure is lower, the brain completes its needed rest more quickly. As a result, waking in the early morning hours becomes more common. The person may feel awake but not tired. The body has already discharged much of its sleep drive. Daytime rest also plays a role. Naps, especially longer or late afternoon ones, can further reduce sleep pressure. These naps are often restorative and necessary, but they contribute to lighter sleep later at night. The body distributes rest across the day rather than concentrating it at night. This pattern reflects adaptation, not dysfunction. Understanding this connection helps remove frustration. Early awakenings are not always signs of a problem with nighttime sleep. They are often a reflection of how the day unfolded. Gentle activity earlier in the day, even in small amounts, can support nighttime rest, not by forcing sleep, but by aligning the body's natural rhythm. At the same time, it is important not to overemphasize activity. The goal is not to exhaust the body, but to engage it enough to create balance. Simple movements, time spent in natural light, and gentle mental engagement can support healthy sleep pressure without strain. When reduced daytime activity leads to earlier awakenings, the body is not misbehaving. It is responding logically to its input. Recognizing this allows sleep to be understood as part of a 24-hour rhythm rather than a single nighttime event. With this perspective, early waking becomes less concerning and more informative, offering insight into how rest and activity are quietly shaping each other each day. Emotional thoughts or quiet reflection tend to surface when the mind is less distracted at night, and this is a natural response to stillness rather than a sign of unrest. During the day, attention is guided by activity, conversation, and routine. Even simple tasks provide structure and distraction, keeping deeper thoughts in the background. At night, especially in the early morning hours, these external anchors fall away. The mind is no longer occupied, and what remains is awareness. This quiet awareness creates space for emotions and memories to rise gently to the surface. Thoughts may drift toward the past, toward people who mattered, moments that shaped life, or feelings that were never fully expressed. These reflections often arrive without urgency. They do not demand action. They simply appear as if the mind is reviewing rather than worrying. For many older adults, this reflection feels calm, even meaningful. Nighttime reflection is different from rumination. Rumination is repetitive and distressing. Quiet reflection is slow and spacious. The mind observes without chasing conclusions. Time feels less linear. Thoughts may come and go without forming a narrative. This is why many people do not feel anxious when these thoughts appear, even though they are awake. The nervous system remains settled. The reduced distraction of night allows emotions to be felt more clearly. During the day, emotions are often managed, postponed, or softened by activity. At night, they are given space to be acknowledged. This can include gratitude, longing, acceptance, or a gentle sense of completion. These feelings are not necessarily sad. They are reflective. The mind is not preparing for the future, but gently touching what has already been lived. For some, this reflection becomes part of a nightly rhythm. Waking briefly and sitting with thoughts before returning to sleep feels natural. Others may remain awake longer simply because the mind is content to rest in awareness. The presence of these thoughts does not mean sleep is failing. It means the mind is transitioning between states with less resistance. Understanding this process helps reduce concern. When reflection is accepted rather than resisted, it often passes naturally. Trying to force the mind to stop thinking can create tension. Allowing thoughts to move freely tends to calm the system. The mind, once acknowledged, often settles. Nighttime reflection is a quiet form of processing. It allows the emotional system to integrate experiences without pressure. When this is understood, waking at night becomes less threatening. It becomes a moment of gentle presence where the mind reflects not because it is troubled, but because it finally has the space to do so. The body's internal clock may shift earlier, changing when rest feels complete, and this adjustment often happens slowly over time. The internal clock, also known as the circadian rhythm, helps regulate when the body feels alert and when it feels ready to rest. In younger years, this rhythm tends to align closely with social schedules, keeping people awake later in the evening and asleep through the early morning hours. As the body ages, this rhythm gradually advances. An earlier internal clock means the body begins preparing for rest sooner in the evening. Sleep may arrive more easily at night, but it may also finish earlier in the morning. The body completes its rest cycle ahead of the clock, leading to awakenings around 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. This does not mean sleep has been cut short. It means the body feels finished with rest sooner than before. This shift reflects changes in how the brain responds to light, darkness, and daily activity. Exposure to daylight, especially in the morning, reinforces an earlier rhythm. Reduced evening stimulation and quieter routines also support earlier sleep timing. Together, these factors gently move the internal clock forward. The body adapts to a new pattern that favors earlier rest and earlier wakefulness. When rest feels complete, earlier staying asleep becomes harder. The brain no longer receives a strong signal to continue resting. Awareness returns naturally. The person may wake feeling calm rather than tired. The challenge comes when this wakefulness is judged against expectations formed earlier in life. Comparing current sleep to past patterns can create frustration where none is needed. It is also important to recognize that an earlier internal clock often brings benefits. Morning hours may feel clearer, energy may be more available earlier in the day. The body finds stability and routine. Sleep becomes more predictable even if shorter. This predictability can support overall well-being when it is accepted rather than resisted. Understanding this shift allows expectations to change. Sleep is no longer measured by how late it lasts, but by how restorative it feels. When the body wakes earlier, it is often responding honestly to its internal rhythm. Respecting that rhythm can reduce stress and improve comfort, allowing rest to be experienced as complete rather than insufficient. Waking at 3 a.m. is often a signal of adjustment, not necessarily a sleep disorder. And understanding this distinction can bring immediate relief. Sleep disorders are usually defined by distress, dysfunction, or impairment during the day. In contrast, many early morning awakenings occur in people who otherwise feel calm, oriented, and able to function. The body wakes, the mind is clear, and there is no sense of panic or confusion. This pattern reflects adaptation rather than pathology. As the body ages, multiple systems adjust at once. Sleep cycles become lighter, hormones shift, the internal clock advances, and energy needs change. These adjustments interact especially during the early morning hours when sleep is already naturally lighter. Waking at 3 a.m. can be the point where these changes converge. The body has rested enough, hormonal signals are shifting. The nervous system is calm but alert. The result is wakefulness that feels neutral rather than distressing. Sleep disorders typically involve struggle, difficulty falling asleep, repeated awakenings accompanied by anxiety or exhaustion during the day. By contrast, many older adults who wake at 3 a.m. do not feel upset at first. They may lie quietly. Some return to sleep. Others remain awake but relaxed. The problem often arises only when the awakening is interpreted as a failure or danger. Concern activates the nervous system, which then makes returning to sleep harder. This is why interpretation matters. When waking is labeled as a disorder, the mind becomes watchful. Clocks are checked, sleep is measured. The body senses this vigilance and responds with alertness. What was once a gentle adjustment becomes a source of tension. The experience changes not because sleep has worsened, but because meaning has been attached to it. Recognizing waking at 3 a.m. as a signal of adjustment allows the nervous system to remain calm. The body is not malfunctioning. It is responding logically to changes in rhythm, energy use, and internal timing. Acceptance often shortens the awakening, or at least makes it more restful. Even quiet wakefulness can be restorative when it is free from worry. It is also important to consider the whole day, not just the night. Early waking may be balanced by better alertness in the morning or by natural rest later in the day. Sleep in older age is often distributed rather than concentrated. The body finds rest across a 24-hour cycle rather than insisting on one long block at night. Understanding this pattern reframes the experience. Instead of asking, "Why can't I sleep?" the question becomes, "What is my body adjusting to?" This shift reduces pressure and supports cooperation with the body rather than resistance. When waking at 3 a.m. is seen as an adjustment rather than a disorder, fear fades. The body is allowed to lead. Sleep may return or it may not, but rest continues in different forms. In that acceptance, nights become quieter and sleep regains its natural supportive role without becoming something to control. Gentle evening routines and consistent habits can help the body feel more settled at night, not by forcing sleep, but by signaling safety and predictability to the nervous system. The body responds best to cues it can trust. When evenings unfold in a familiar, unhurried way, the nervous system begins to soften long before sleep arrives. This softness, rather than exhaustion, is what allows rest to deepen naturally. As the day draws to a close, the body starts to shift its focus from engagement to recovery. In younger years, this transition can happen quickly. With age, the transition benefits from more time and gentleness. Sudden changes, bright lights, loud sounds, or intense conversation late in the evening can keep the nervous system alert. Gentle routines help ease this shift, allowing the body to settle gradually rather than abruptly. Consistency plays an important role. Repeating the same sequence of actions each evening helps the body anticipate what comes next. Dimming lights, moving at a slower pace, or engaging in a quiet activity sends a clear message that stimulation is ending. These cues do not need to be elaborate. Their strength lies in repetition. Over time, the body learns that these moments are safe, familiar, and restful. Gentle routines also support emotional calm. Evenings can be a time when unresolved thoughts surface. A predictable routine provides structure without demand. It gives the mind something simple to follow while allowing thoughts to pass without engagement. This reduces mental effort and lowers internal tension. It is important to note that gentle routines are not rigid rules. They are flexible patterns that adapt to the body's needs. Some evenings may feel more restful than others. The goal is not perfection but reassurance. When the body senses that it does not need to stay alert, it releases its grip more easily. Consistency in habits extends beyond the evening itself. Waking times, exposure to morning light, and daytime activity all influence how settled the body feels at night. When daily rhythms are stable, the body does not need to guess when rest will come. This reduces nighttime vigilance. Gentle routines also help remove pressure around sleep. Instead of focusing on whether sleep will happen, attention shifts to the process of winding down. Sleep becomes a natural outcome rather than a goal. This approach aligns with how the aging body prefers to rest, gradually, quietly, and without demand. Over time, these routines create a sense of trust between the body and the environment. The night no longer feels unpredictable. Even when awakenings occur, the body remains calmer, knowing it can return to rest or remain at ease. In this way, gentle evening routines do more than support sleep. They support a relationship with rest that is patient and compassionate. The body feels settled not because it is forced to sleep, but because it is allowed to. Night awakenings after 60 are less about something being wrong and more about listening to how sleep has changed. For much of life, sleep is judged by how long it lasts and how deeply it holds us until morning. When that pattern shifts, it is easy to assume something is failing. But aging does not break sleep, it reshapes it. The body no longer sleeps in the same heavy, uninterrupted way, not because it cannot, but because it no longer needs to. After 60, sleep becomes more responsive. It adapts to changes in energy use, hormones, nervous system sensitivity, and daily rhythm. Waking during the night, especially in the early morning hours, often reflects this adaptation. The body checks in. It notices. It adjusts. These awakenings are not alarms. They are moments of awareness in a lighter sleep structure. Listening to sleep means paying attention without judgment. Not every awakening needs to be solved. Not every pause needs to be filled with worry. Sometimes the body wakes simply because it has rested enough for that moment. Sometimes it wakes because it is sensitive to comfort, temperature, or stillness. When these awakenings are met calmly, they often pass more gently. Sleep may return, or rest may continue in a quieter form. The difficulty usually arises when old expectations remain unchanged. Comparing current sleep to sleep from decades ago creates tension. The body senses that tension and responds with alertness. What was once a neutral awakening becomes a struggle. Letting go of comparison allows sleep to find its new shape without resistance. There is also wisdom in these awakenings. They invite a slower relationship with night, a softer pace, less demand for control. The body asks to be listened to rather than corrected. When this listening happens, sleep becomes less of a task and more of a rhythm that unfolds naturally. Night awakenings do not mean health is declining. They often mean the body is communicating honestly, responding with gentleness, adjusting routines, honoring rest, and accepting quiet wakefulness supports balance more effectively than forcing sleep ever could. If reflections like these help you feel more at ease with the changes that come with age, you are warmly welcome to subscribe to the channel. We share gentle insights like this regularly always, with the aim of understanding rather than alarm. I look forward to meeting you again in the next video, where we will continue listening together quietly, patiently, and without pressure.